Attention Sleepless Knights. Thank you for consuming this OSI 74 product broadcast, live from the Black Knight satellite. For optimum performance and safety, your host, Mr. Lobo, asks that you please listen to these instructions carefully. When in a hospital or other healthcare facility, observe the restrictions on the use of electronic devices. Switch off before boarding an aircraft to prevent interference with communications systems. Do not operate this device in the presence of flammable gases or fumes, chemical plants, or where blasting operations are in progress. Always listen hands-free while driving a vehicle. Failure to observe these instructions may lead to immediate termination. It's time now for the show to begin. Thank you. Have a very pleasant evening.
You're not dreaming. You're listening to the Sleepless Knights of Insomnia podcast. I'm your host, Paul Sanders, and this is my co-host, Gal 9000.
Good evening, everyone.
Gal, can you retrieve and queue up tape number, CM061520?
Copy that.
In this week's episode, we're going to jump into the Wayback Machine.
Do you want me to initiate the time jump, Paul?
No, cancel that, Gal. That is not what I meant. It means that we're going to play the file once it's queued up and ready.
Copy. File queued and ready. Standing by.
Thanks, Gal. As I was saying, we're going to play a file that was recorded at an earlier date. It's an interview between Mr. Lobo and Cory Maccabee, an American writer, director, singer, and songwriter. And this is all according to his Wikipedia page. Gal, this is where you're supposed to laugh at my wittiness.
Oh, ha, 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 ha.
Never get a break. Moving on. All kidding aside, Cory Maccabee is a really great guy. Lobo and I have done a few projects with him in the past, and we've attended some of his concerts as well. If you get the chance, I highly recommend it. Now, without further delay, all systems go. All systems go? Gal?
Yes, Paul.
That means play the tape.
Copy that.
Greetings, this is Mr. Lobo, and I'm here in the Insomniac Lounge with one of my favorite artists of this age or any other, Cory Maccabee. Cory, how are you?
I'm doing great, sir. I'm very happy to see you, and thank you for having me.
Now, yeah, you spent a lot of time on the moon in your past.
Yes.
Paul right now has been floating in space. He was in a space capsule for a while, and he's still out in space. So we've been actually doing the show long distance with each other, and that's really difficult. You know, as you know, being in outer space for that length of time.
Yeah,
how hard that can be.
It definitely. You have to like yourself.
And do you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like myself, but I like myself.
All right. Now, you did quite a few videos from the moon, and you had some interesting guests and stuff. How do you get guests on the moon?
Well, my first moon broadcast, I think, was in 1994, and my guests were the late great Buck Naked and my cat.
Yes. Well, all right. I guess that answers itself.
Yeah.
I've seen both of those.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then most of the time you were by yourself on the moon, except when somehow Buck Naked got there. Maybe one of the saucers from the Church of the Subgenius got Buck Naked there somehow.
Yeah, he had a video too once where he was flying around in a saucer. He was a lot of fun. He was somebody I worked with. We worked in a bar together, pre-moon
days. Mm-hmm. You know, you're kind of a Renaissance man. You have a lot of talents. I think the first thing I ever saw that you did was an animated short. I think it was either with Spike and Mike's Twisted Animation Festival of Animation, or it might have been the Tourney of Animation, but it was a short animation called Billy Nair.
Yeah,
right?
that was the Tourney of Animation. That was back when animation festivals were necessary. You couldn't see an animated short without one. And, I mean, other than Bugs Bunnies and things that would come on TV. But, yeah, that was a animated piece. It was house paint on paper. It took me about 3 years to paint it. It was an incredibly boring process. It was 2,173 paintings. And when it played for the first time at the Tourney of Animation, it was in San Francisco at the Castro Theater. And I wasn't living anywhere at the time. I'd given up my apartment and wasn't able to get another place to live. I was staying in my friend's carport. And so I went to the Castro and didn't have any money. And I said, my film's playing in here. Can I go see it? And they said, yeah, they were very nice to me. So,
wow, that's amazing. And now they were, you've told me this story a million times about how they were painted. And that, I mean, was it house paint?
It was house paint. I made a rotoscope out of a busted projector and a light bulb, and used a corner of a cabinet door for registration. It was just regular, typing paper, or what you have in your printer. And I was.
So this was 8.5 by 11 paper. Is that what you're talking about here?
8.5 by 11, and there were 2,173 of them. Now, what I wasn't counting on is the paint made the paper curl. So when I went to photograph all of them, I had a very difficult time matching up the corner of the paper as registration because they had malformed. But we got it. It turned out pretty good.
It's amazing because it's got a look unlike anything else. And I guess all of that blood and sweat and poor registration all comes together in a fantastic way for that. What did that evolve directly into the Billy Nair Show band, or did one come before the other?
The band evolved. I mean, the band was many different bands, and I would just slap the name on it. However, it would evolve. At the time I was making it, I had started the first Billy Nair Show, and that cartoon. So it became part of the group, I guess.
I mean, was that sort of your stage name? I mean, where does the name Billy Nair come from?
Well, I didn't want to use my own name. I was asked to perform. I didn't have a band or anything, and I was asked to perform once at this club. So I just put together this little quartet and called it the Billy Nair Show, just because it meant nothing. And then spent the next 25 years trying to explain myself.
And you're still explaining yourself.
I should add on to those.
The guy in that animation's not really you. I mean, I don't think that's. I mean, you don't act like that guy. That's a different kind of guy than you are.
Yeah, he's different. The look that you were talking about, that's paint. What you're seeing is brush strokes.
Yeah.
The thing that was really lovely about it was the way that look of 24 frames a second paint moving looked like the bar noises sounded.
Yeah.
They looked together really nicely. It was an interesting effect. I had no idea what it was going to look like.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And this seems to be like an interesting trend where you create art on your own terms with means of your own design. Is that part of your process? I mean, you're not looking for a template. You're going, okay, well, I'm going to do this thing, but I'm going to start from scratch and do it in this arcane way. I don't know. That's not the right way of asking that, but I think you understand where I'm going with the question.
Well, it's one of the freedoms of being uneducated. You're curious about something and you want to try it, and so you just got to figure it out. And you'll do it differently. Sometimes you'll do it differently than somebody who knows better, somebody who has all the tools. And because of that, you make a lot of discoveries, and you end up doing things that you might like better than if you had followed a regular, structure. In fact, right now I'm doing a lot of animation. I'm not using, animation tools. I'm using my computer but it's all still single frame animation. And I'm using PowerPoint. A lot of people are surprised when they hear that, but when doing stop motion animation, PowerPoint's a great tool because you get to line everything up and see how it looks and make changes. and I'm doing I'm doing these postcards, basically stationary pieces with moving mouths, and I'm using the old Speed Racer Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer method of 10 positions of the mouth.
Yes, you got just a few. You got your M and your B, and you got your few mouth positions, and that's it.
Yep, and just fly them in and try to sing.
Yeah,
and I love the way it looks. I think it's really fun. I've been playing with that a lot.
I mean, is it like that musically too? Do you just sort of dive in and just whatever sounds good is works?
Yeah. I do a lot of music here in my little space station. I've been using GarageBand mostly. I like it. And anything you make in GarageBand, you can pretty much fly into somebody else's system and play with it if you want to work with other people too.
I always think it's interesting because, have you ever taught art or have been a teacher of art? Because you seem like you have the temperament of that.
I lecture a lot. I've done a lot of lectures at art schools. There was one point where I was asked to apply for a full-time professorship at the Chicago Art Institute, but I had throat surgery at the time of my oral interview. I wrote, filled out a lot of paperwork and wrote essays and stuff, and made it to the final stage, but ended up having a lot of throat surgery and wasn't able to speak when the time came. So.
Oh boy. Wow. I think we had talked to you at that time after you had your throat surgery, right? Or around that time?
Yeah, I've had a couple of them. They're not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. I always think it's interesting, on the subject, and not to discount your throat surgery, but on the subject of art, I think it's interesting because most artists work in isolation. And so when you talk to other artists, you always learn something because they've done some things or have their own tricks or have just made discoveries or have philosophies that you maybe hadn't ever thought of. I think it's really interesting that, I think to a certain degree, most artists are self-taught to a degree, and they have their own kit, I guess, to use one of your terms, that's different than anybody else's, So I always feel like there's so many ways to do art and to make art that I feel like I always, even when in a situation where I'm supposed to be the teacher, I feel like I'm always learning from all the people around me.
Well, that's one of the wonderful things about, not every discipline, but many of the disciplines. Like here, everybody's being homeschooled. I got 3 kids who are here being homeschooled. I've got, there's a lot going on. So to get anything done, especially as a writer, I wear shooting range, sound muffling, or noise canceling earmuffs. Here they are right here. This is a pair of noise canceling earmuffs.
You're gonna fire some hot lead of art.
Yeah, and so it's, you have to isolate yourself for certain things, but being a musician, you learn a lot when you're working with other musicians. Being an actor, or even being a director, you learn from working with everybody, including the actors. And but there are certain things where isolation is necessary, at least for most of the process.
It's kind of, you need both, right? You need input. You need to sort of observe and live and understand things, and then you've got to have that time to process it on your own, right? Yeah,
it also working with other people, or at least exposing your stuff to other people and trying to be open to how they see it, it helps you understand why you're doing it too. Not just the piece and what people don't understand about it, or what people don't like about it, or what they do like about it and what they connect with, but rolling with that and trying to understand why you would make your next piece, based on how people are touched by it or not.
Wow. Yeah, I totally understand that. Well, you know what? We have to take a short break. I want to maybe talk a little bit about your film career when we come back. And and then, now, let's save that self-deprecating humor for somebody else. We'll be back with more Sleepless Nights of Insomnia right after this.
Ich habe es auf dem Mars vergessen.
Ich habe es auf dem Mars vergessen. Ich habe es auf dem Mars vergessen. Ich habe es auf dem Mars vergessen.
Ich habe es auf dem Mars vergessen.
Yeah.
Ich habe es auf dem Mars vergessen.
Oh yeah!
Ich habe es auf dem Mars vergessen.
Ich habe es auf dem Mars vergessen. Ich habe...
RedPlanetPlanningCommission.com.
Mr. Lobo is here with a man who some people call a space cowboy. Some people call him the gangster of love also.
Or Maurice.
He's the man in the moon. He's got so many faces. He's got more faces than Lon Chaney.
Oh, man. That is the greatest compliment I've ever had.
So a lot creatively, I would say, a man of 1,000 creative faces. So we have worked together a little bit when you were doing your. I guess I'll talk a little bit about how we met you. My entire career of hosting horror movies, there's always been the one or two guys who've said you should do something with Cory Maccabee. And that just sort of kind of was a thing that just kept happening. And I thought, I don't know if I'm ever really going to meet that guy, but maybe if I have an opportunity, I should try and meet that guy. So you were going to be in Lancaster to do the It's Modern Art presentation of your it's kind of a sort of a lecture, sort of a seminar, sort of a self-help, kind of a one-man show. How would you describe the Small Star, seminar? How would you describe the Small Star seminar, I guess?
I think you nailed it. It's a self-help seminars concert. It started actually the way that it was written was my band had broken up. The Billionaire Show had broken up for a while, and this festival in Poland contacted me in Wrocław, Poland, and they said, "Can you come out and do this? Do a performance?" And they were going to pay me, and nobody had paid me anything for a long time. I said, "Sure, I'd love to." So, but I didn't have any music, and I was doing the Captain Ahab's Motorcycle Club shows, which was a collaborative. I'd put up these songs and people would send me their versions of them and I'd go perform to them live.
Now, was supposed to be a film, right, initially, and has it evolved into something else?
Well, Captain Ahab's Motorcycle Club was the name of the collaborative. I called it because I thought it was great for graphics and illustrations, and that worked out really well. And there were different areas of global collaboration. Part of it was the club itself, Captain Ahab's Motorcycle Club. And part of it was the idea that we were going to make a feature film. Originally, we were going to make a feature film about Abraham Lincoln's embalmer. But it became apparent that was really a bad match. And as that was becoming apparent, I did the Small Stars seminar, and people started doing artwork based on the ideas in the songs. And so I thought, all right, well, this is a good match, and there's also other things that people are doing that are kind of natural to this. Let's just follow this. So we ended up making a film which hasn't been released yet. It's called Deep Astronomy and the Romantic Sciences. And a lot of our live performances that we've done together are in the film. And there's also a narrative that's been written, and people volunteered to be actors and film it and everything. So it's done. There's a gentleman doing some final audio work on it right now, but hopefully when all the smoke clears with all the pandemic and all of these things that are happening right now, I'll get it
Chronic
out.
diarrhea. We're calling it chronic diarrhea on the podcast. We're trying to shelter people from the horribleness of the real world. So any references to the pandemic is chronic diarrhea.
Chronic diarrhea. That's a good. I have a joke. I always say, when my kids go, "Oh, you got to eat this," I'm like, "No, I don't think my stomach will handle it." And they go, "No, you got to try it." I said, "Okay, but if I get diarrhea, it's going to be on your head."
Oh no!
Oh,
that is a threat.
Yeah, but play on words. It's an old phrase.
Yes, it's good. No, it works. Yes, that's terrible.
Yeah. Did I ruin the podcast?
No, you made it better. You made it 25% better.
Oh.
So we met you at Lancaster to film one of the segments that might be an ingredient in the deep astronomy somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Does any of that footage get used? Not to put you on the spot right now, but did some of that footage get used?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. So we Paul and I and Dixie, we all came out and we got to see you perform and do your songs. And Dixie actually made a little music video for the kit that we put on OSI 74, which you've seen that. Yeah. And so it was very fun to meet you in person and eat pancakes and talk about movies. And it was a great experience to be able to witness you do your art live, but also kind of be able to get to know you better as a person, and to collaborate. Which I'm a sucker for collaborations. I love to collaborate. I think you and I have that in common. You ever have people who get mad at you because it doesn't go the direction that they think it should go, or sometimes collaborations kind of can go. Some collaborations can sometimes go that way, where everybody ends up. Some people get disappointed.
Well, it's something that people have to keep in mind when dealing with a feature film, is that more stuff is going to end up on the cutting room floor than it's going to end up on the screen. That's just the way it is. You unless you've got a film that's written just to the teeth and storyboarded, and you stick completely to that storyboard, which is confining.
Rare. Yeah, almost never happens.
Yeah, and maybe not the best idea either, because you have no choices.
Yeah.
But this was made by not knowing exactly what we were doing and going out and trying a million things. So, then in the end, putting them all together and seeing what worked. Another thing that happened with this too was trying to write a story for it with all this material. And that wasn't easy. I kept writing stories and kept writing the same story, and I didn't like it. And then finally I decided to kind of get past it. I thought, well, what's the last thing I would do? And then I thought, well, whatever's popular would be the last thing I would do. I tend to figure if everybody's doing it, why should I, So I
feel like that too about things.
Let everybody else ride that wave. So I thought, what's popular? And I thought lady robots. Mm-hmm. And I thought, all right, well, what if I made a lady robot? And then I thought, okay, well, who do I like? Because I like to storyboard and think about somebody as a character. And there was this young man named Rudy who I met at the liquor store on the corner. And every time we saw each other, we'd just end up hanging out and talking. And for like an hour every time, we just liked each other. And so I found that he's a hip-hop artist. And so I knew he was a performer and knew how to be in front of people. And I got so used to the idea of him being this character. The next time I saw him, I said, Rudy, this may sound weird, but I'm writing this script and I'm thinking of you as one of my characters. Would you be interested in trying to, act in this film? And he's like, yeah, sure, I'd love to. And he did, and he was amazing. I've had a couple test screenings. Everyone's like, wow, who's that actor? He's really great. I'm like, yeah, it's his first time. It's just who he is. He pops off the screen.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I mean, obviously you have these spontaneous things of, you make these choices and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't, which is why I asked you if the footage we shot with you was even in the movie, because it's always a possibility that it just, at the end of the day, it just doesn't come together. There's so many documentaries and films that I have been in that I'm not in. I was filmed, but I didn't end up in the final cut. And you have to understand that that's part of the process. You made, I think, probably I'm going to go out on a big limb here, but the biggest budgeted film you probably did was The American Astronaut.
Yeah, it totally was. Two people who had money that they felt comfortable spending on such a thing, fortunately decided that it was a good idea. And I don't know how they're feeling about it now, but I couldn't be more thrilled that they did.
It's an amazing film. I mean, I probably watched it 12 times, maybe.
I've watched it more than that.
Oh, you beat me. All right.
Well, actually, one thing I would do is, because the way audience responded to it was always very different. One time you'd go into a screening at 7:00, and the one thing which, the old man telling the joke in the bar, people would just laugh and clap when it was over, and then the next screening at 9:00, people would sit there uncomfortable and angry, hoping it would end. So you couldn't tell how people were going to act. And there was this chemistry of the audience. So I would, whenever I had a chance, I would just go sit and listen to the audience and see what people did, how they reacted. So I've probably watched that film 200 times at least.
It's interesting because I show that film to different people. And I think that's kind of like one of the, I would say, important defining elements of a cult movie, or what you would call a cult movie. I define a cult movie as a movie people intellectually obsess on. The other definition is that people proselytize a cult movie. They want new members. They want other people to discover this cult. So they will try to show it to their friends, and that's kind of usually how a lot of these films get a life so much further than is expected, is because you've got these people who are proselytizing them and sharing them and trying to show the movie to their friends. When I try to show your movie to my friends, it definitely, they're either in immediately or they're out, it seems. And it's interesting because there's some friends like, oh, my friend, is really going to like this movie. And then I put it on for them, and you could tell they cannot vibe with it at all. And then the next person, you put it on for them, and they just, instantly get it, fall in love with it, laugh at it. I don't know anybody. I can't understand not laughing at that movie. Do you ever have people say, not understand that you're presenting something that is humorous to them?
Oh, yeah. All the time. In fact, when it first came out, the reviews were hot and cold. Like, people either loved it or they hated me personally. They hated my guts.
You did this.
Yeah, like you with your face sticking out of your head. And but then as years went on, the only people who wrote about it were the people who liked it. So it seems like just everybody likes this film, but that's absolutely not the way it hit the streets.
Who was the professor in that? He was amazing.
Rocco Sisto. He is amazing. He's a Shakespearean actor. He does a lot of work in New York, does a lot of Shakespeare plays. And when he came and auditioned, he was kind of disturbing, and really in a really different way. And I mean, he's a wonderful guy. I love Rocco. But I think he scared one of the producers. And I said, see, now that's the thing. They're like, no, but he's not scary. He's just like really, it just made me feel wrong. And I'm like, well, I think that's great.
He does make you feel wrong, but in the movie, it's right, I feel. And it's his birthday, of course. How did a lot of the dialogue evolve for that movie? I mean, some of it seems random, but I'm assuming you probably tonally had to try a lot of lines or certain lines of dialogue to sort of know what would fit.
Well, most of it, almost all of it was written years before it was made. I tweaked it a little bit to match some of the people who got cast. And one of the things which definitely changed was Rocco, when I asked him, what do you think of the script? What do you think of the characters when we first started working together? He said, I feel like my character is telling this story to Bodysuit.
How was that? Could you say that one more time?
He said, Rocco said, I feel like my character, like the professor, is telling this story to Bodysuit, as a father would tell a story to his son. And I said, that's really interesting, Rocco. I'm gonna tweak it a bit and make that the situation at the very end. And so that's why I wrote that final line. It was something else. I forget what it was, but I thought that was more interesting.
Yeah, the songs and stuff in that are really great. And what's interesting, because when I saw Stingray Sam, which you probably did, which was years after that, right? I'm assuming. Yeah. I always thought Stingray Sam came before.
Well, Stingray Sam was a response to, pardon me for a moment, choking on my saliva because I almost laughed. Yeah, I'm not sick. I don't have that thing, that diarrhea.
You don't have chronic diarrhea. That's good to know.
Yeah. Stingray Sam. When I was writing that, it's a very political film. I mean, you can't really tell, but it's. I mean, it's not propaganda, but it was inspired by everything that was going on at the time, and much of it's still going on. The first episode there's a lot about privatizing prison systems and things like that, but it's presented in the same way that science fiction was presented back in the 60s, when the Cold War was happening, and it inspired all those Outer Limits and Twilight Zones and things like that. And another reason I made it that way is I was angry at what our country was doing. We were bombing Iraq and lying about it and things like that. And so I thought, I'd like to make something that criticizes American culture and at the same time embraces it. And so I used everything, from singing cowboys to, space, stuff based, kind of our Americana space stuff.
Pop culture, science fiction.
Yeah, little girls who've been, like that little girl taken away from her family, and these two guys going to save her. That's early Americana melodrama, So I made something that was fun like that, and but at the same time, the environment of it was all these different things, like pharmaceutical companies and prisons and things like that.
I feel like that is an important aspect of good satire, in my opinion. Like you look at maybe like Mark Twain or Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I mean, it's like the whole why shoot your enemy in the face when you can smother them with a pillow, Yeah. And I feel like it's one of those things where it doesn't come off as soapboxy or finger wagging. There's kind of like a kindness in there, which it kind of balances the sort of razor wit that's happening,
Well, with things that are going on now, I went on social media, and there was a conversation I had with somebody who thought if I didn't like Trump, I didn't like him. And I made a comment about that, and I felt bad that I had, because the string of comments just got more and more vicious.
Yeah.
As it went on, and I thought, all right, well, I've made a mistake. I have to keep in mind that I forget who said it, but there's an old quote about if you plant crabapple seeds, don't expect to harvest, golden delish, So, I feel like I thought, all right, well, I'm definitely planting crabapple seeds at the moment. So I should pull back a bit. I didn't think of it in those terms.
Yeah, the internet's difficult because you have a lot of people who are they're having a war of words without having to look people in the eye or, try to understand someone else's point of view. I think it's just kind of like the world's angriest video game for a lot of people.
Well, it's like that experiment they did where if they had an actor who would pretend to be electrocuted every time somebody would push a button, and they had these people asking them questions, and when they got it wrong, they had to electrocute them, and the person was acting. They didn't know. And then if the person could see them, most of them wouldn't do it. But if they were shielded, if their identity,
interesting,
they would do it almost every time.
Wow. Well, I'm going to hook myself up to some electrodes, and we're going to give Cory McAbee a button to shock Mr. Lobo. While we're setting that up for our next round, we will be back with more Sleepless Nights of Insomnia.
We come from the retro future. We want you to be nostalgic for what's to come. A new channel and distribution network for smart people with bad taste, featuring content from Church of the Subgenius, Creature Features, Cinema, Insomnia, Sleazy P. Martini and Guar, Troma, Cory McAbee, horror, sci-fi, Saturday morning cartoons, midnight movies, and assorted trash we love. Add our channel OSI74 to your Roku player or visit OSI74.com. All systems go.
And we're back with more of Cory McAbee, Renaissance man, or maybe just like a nonsense man. So much. There's so many things we could have talked. We're in our last segment together, and I feel like I should have planned like a whole mini series breaking out all the things to talk about, because we barely touched the surface of the Small Star seminar. Which, of course, led to the romantic sciences, right? And what are the romantic sciences? How do you describe the romantic sciences?
Actually, I think all science is fairly romantic. Well, once you take all the math out.
Yeah, I don't math, so that works for me.
That's a language that I haven't really learned, but I understand it when I hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So tell us about what's a romantic. How do you define romantic sciences? This is like truth, a more positive version of truth versus facts.
Yeah, it's a truth versus facts spin-off aspect, I guess. It's about. Well, actually, I think the sciences are getting more and more romantic as time goes on. I think they're adopting a lot of things that they, or at least repackaging a lot of ideas that they've previously rejected. There's also very romantic things throughout the history, like those golden records being shot up into space with somebody's brain waves when they first fell in love put in there. And the idea that anybody would ever find those records is, that's kind of romantic in itself. Fools in love, basically, that one. But and in fact, in my film, there's one scientist who wants to up the odds of such a thing. So he's got this thing called the Golden Thumb Drive program, where he shoots little golden thumb drives into space in all sorts of directions.
Yes. That sounds awesome. So one of the things in the Small Star seminar, which I think relates to some of the other things, is at least the last time I saw you, which was, I don't know if this was the Small Star seminar or some evolution of that, but you were talking about what happens to us, to our bodies when we die, and the sort of we have a very there's a lot of cemeteries on this planet, and as a horror host, I really like cemeteries, but a lot of times that's a lot of space and a lot of resources and a lot of mulch that could be perhaps better used. What could you give us a better description of that? I'm sorry, my brain is not not getting there today.
No, mine's coming and going too. No, actually you don't become mulch in a traditional cemetery. You get filled full of chemicals, toxic chemicals, and then they put you in this airtight coffin, and then they put you in a cement vault that's deep down in the ground, and you don't become mulch. You become basically filthy, slimy goo encased in a box with a giant fart.
And you take all these nutrients from the planet, but you're not putting them back.
Yeah. You're it's a weird practice that, again, going back to Abraham Lincoln, it got its toehold on society during the Civil War when trains wouldn't ship rotting corpses, and there were just so many of them. So these guys, this was right when they developed this chemical embalming technique. So these guys would set up their tents all along the battlefield, sell their wares to the soldiers the day before a battle. Then the battle would happen, and they would wade among the dead and the wounded to find their commissions, bring them back to their tents, embalm them, and ship them home.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so
that's wild.
It's built and built and built, and there's all these weird facts like those cement vaults that they built, that they put into the ground, use enough concrete to build a 2-lane freeway halfway across the U.S., and the metal that they use in coffins that they bury every year could rebuild the Golden Gate Bridge annually. And,
wow.
Then you get into the idea of, getting rid of natural habitats to create lawns and, putting all these toxic chemicals in somebody and then putting them in the ground. So it's a really weird practice that evolved. And now there's this thing, the organic burials are becoming, well, not super popular, but they're getting a toehold. And as I use that phrase twice now, and a friend of mine who's working with me on this new project he was the founder of the Green Burial Council, and now he lives in Australia and he's doing Green Burial Council International. But he's working with me on this thing. Oh, actually, I'm going to backtrack. What happened was, in deep astronomy and the romantic sciences, when I was writing the script, I put in this thing called the Red Planet Planning Commission. And the Red Planet Planning Commission was a business, a corporation that raised a lot of money but didn't do anything. And so when the film was made, I decided to make it into something that would help organic cemeteries by reintroducing native milkweed to those areas to create an influx in monarch butterfly population to help their species, which is on the decline, and to work as a buffer, I guess, because there's a lot of conservation projects out there. Like I'm the kind of guy who can't watch a nature documentary because I don't want to see a polar bear starve, And
yeah.
I hate going to the aquarium because I don't like seeing guys being tortured. Mm-hmm. I look to the left when I'm getting a shot in the right arm. I'm one of those guys. So I made the Red Planet Planning Commission so we could talk about terraforming Mars and creating new concepts about how to introduce life to Mars as an illustration to what we can do here with these, organic burial grounds and butterflies and things like that. And it's fun. There's comedy in the Mars discussion, and there's science in the Mars discussion, and there's fiction and surrealism and conversations in the Mars discussion. As to where
I want my corpse dumped on Mars so I can help terraform Mars with my body.
Well, that's one of the things with the Red Planet Planning Commission. Now that human mulching is legal in Washington State, and there's a woman who's building this beautiful facility for such a thing. It's gorgeous if you have a chance to look it up online. So the idea is to send human mulch to Mars, and my choice of animals to introduce would be cockroaches.
Wow. So there'll be cockroaches there on Mars. I guess when we finally start building apartments on Mars, we're going to need cockroaches, so that makes sense.
Well, there was cockroaches on Pangea, I mean, you can't start a planet without them.
You gotta have cockroaches. Everybody's got their job, and cockroaches have a job.
And they're smart and sweet and cute and interesting.
Are they sweet and cute?
Yeah, they are.
Cockroach?
Yeah. I've had. We got invaded by cockroaches. The German cockroaches, they call them. Though I think in Germany they call them Russian cockroaches.
They're all passing the buck.
They're passing the buck. The American cockroaches are those big water bug guys, but these guys, the little German ones, they like to live indoors. So I caught them and I'd put them in this little fish tank full of dirt with little places to hide, and I'd put food in for them. And their personalities were all different. Like every now and then, two of them would become codependent. Some of them were sort of bullies. There was, they all had personalities. Then I took them up a ways away where there were no buildings to bother anybody to get rid of them. And let me go back. Every time I try to throw a new one in, I got to where I just catch them by hand. They don't bite, Mm-hmm. I'd throw a new one in. They would all jump out, so I would do it in the bathtub so I could catch them all and throw them back in. It was a real rodeo. And then I took them up to this place. I opened up the thing. None of them jumped out. They weren't having it. They weren't leaving. And then when I brought them back, every time I threw a new one in, they're like, no. Hold your ground, kids. This could be a trap. They were smart.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. That is something.
Well,
that seems very romantic and scientific all at the same time. Now, the movie that you're making, Deep Astronomy, that is all directly related to the romantic sciences, right?
Oh, yeah. It's the whole title of the film is Deep Astronomy and the Romantic Sciences.
Oh, okay, that's the full title of the film.
Yeah.
And then when is that coming out? Later this year?
I don't know. Yeah, hopefully soon, because I really want people to see this film. Those performances that we did in Lancaster, some of them were called Deep Astronomy and the Romantic Sciences.
So the first one might have been Small Star Seminar, and the second or third one that we did together was the Deep Astronomy, perhaps.
Yeah, actually, you filmed the Small Star Seminar too, or
yeah. That's I feel like we've done a few. I feel like we've done it 3 times. Have we?
Yeah, we did Small Star Seminar, Deep Astronomy and the Romantic Sciences, which was a science lecture. And then we did a PowerPoint presentation science lecture. And then we did, what was it called? Sentimental Systems Reform.
Yes, that was the one. That was the one that had all the stuff about heat, meat, water, and mulch, right?
Meat, water, and mulch. Yeah.
Which is what bodies are.
Yeah. When they
potentially.
Yeah. If they're lucky.
If they're lucky, yeah.
We'll be right back after this word from our sponsor.
The Small Star Corporation is working with newly crafted scientists to support something far-reaching by not reaching far at all.
You're listening to the Sleepless Knights of Insomnia podcast. Back to the program in session.
You've got another film that you're planning?
I've got the Red Planet Planning Commission isn't a film. The Red Planet Planning Commission is that thing where I'm going to be. Did we talk about the butterflies and the organic cemetery?
Yeah, we talked about that. I guess what I mean is what you did your pitch online for a movie, or I'm getting my things confused.
No, that's a totally different.
Totally different train of thought. It doesn't have any natural connection to any of the other stuff.
There's real science involved, but it was its own thing. That was during the major lockdown. I live here in Queens, where it's gotten pretty gnarly. There's 6 apartments in my building. 2 young people and 1 old person got the virus. So
that's terrible.
Yeah, so it's all around here. So we were very much locked down, and I was watching people try things that just didn't work. Like there were people who were great on stage doing concerts, and they were trying to do them in their living rooms, and 2 people would watch, and I just thought, there's got to be other things to try. So I took a story that had been kicking around in my head for a while, and I wrote a 30-minute one-person presentation of it. And I called it a pitch party, and I invited producers and film people to watch, and also made it open to everybody. Everybody was invited. And then did a live stream presentation of a story. And it was great. It was so much fun. The response was wonderful. I think about, I don't know, 1,100 people I know.
Oh, wow.
Checking it out. And
awesome.
Yeah, and I really, the response has been really nice. And I think some people might have been a little confused by it, but it's a story of a clown who's genetically a clown, which I thought, when I was a little kid, I thought that was actually a thing. I thought clowns were their own kind of person. Back in the 60s, you'd see...
They come from the native old country of clowns.
Sure,
they've got all the traditional genetic clown traits.
Yeah. I mean, when you're back in the 60s, they broke everything up into, in the cartoons. You'd see.
It's a small world. Yeah, you've got like the you're talking about the Native American with the headdress and the full cartoonish version of their clothes, and everyone else, the Germans with their the wooden shoes on the
blonde ponytails sticking out.
Ponytails. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I thought, the clowns were, they were just a different kind of person with a different
crowd race of clowns.
Yeah, different skin, different clothing.
Yes.
And I was a little kid, and when I went, my mom took me to a circus and I saw a clown. I was like, "Is that a real clown?" And my mom said, "Yeah." And I mean, no, I mean, a real clown. She's like, "Yeah, that's a real clown." And it was very confusing. So I liked that idea recently, and I thought, well, what if this is the last of his species? And my tagline for it was, when a clown gives his life to save yours, the least you could do is smile. So he's the last of his species, and the idea was that his people evolved completely separate from everybody else, in the same way that the Tasmanian tigers or Tasmanian wolves, they evolved to fit the need of the ecosystem that wolves fill. And so they look like wolves and they act like wolves and they hunted like wolves, but they're more closely related to kangaroos. So he was like that. And, he fit the eco purpose as a person. But one of the main differences between him, besides the way his skin markings was, his blood was blue because it was copper based.
Interesting. So he's got copper-based blood, and this is why he can save humanity somehow.
Well, yeah. I was watching this one. I was doing some research. And watching this one clip on horseshoe crabs. They have blue copper-based blood, and scientists found out that it was a powerful antibiotic that could defeat many diseases in red blood. So they were harvesting all these horseshoe crabs and just rounding them up and bleeding them and selling their blood. And so I thought, well, if this person is the last of his kind and there's a giant plague happening and his blood could help people, but at the same time, he's not going to be considered human, and he's going to be basically used for harvesting blood, he has to go back to this hospital and sacrifice himself. That's the story.
Wow. So this was created partially online?
Yeah, well, I wrote it and then did a live stream. You can find it at I've got a Vimeo channel. It's vimeo.com/Cory Maccabee. And also I've got a YouTube channel. But it's called Finale. My character's name's Finale. His parents named him that because they knew he was going to be the last. And or his mother.
Nice, very poetic.
Yeah. And he's not very smart, but he's very clever.
He's not very smart, but he's very clever. I guess I can identify with that. I always wanted to be a genius, but I always had to settle for just being highly creative.
That works. I always think genius and artist are two words that other people have to say about you. You can't say it about yourself.
Yeah, it's like being funny or being cool. You can't walk into a room and say, I'm cool. And everybody would go, oh, what a loser. Yeah. Or funny, right? I love it when people say, I'm so funny. Let me tell you how funny I am. I'm hilarious. It's like, boy, please don't. Yeah, I feel like it has to be observed. It's got to be observed, right? Right. That's the science of it.
Well, that's one of the things it took me years to come to terms with this. People would say, they were artists and stuff. And I just always had a hard time saying it. And I realized it's because when people say, that's when people would talk about art, they would say, it's something that touches you deep inside, or it makes you look up from your circumstances. And for me to say I'm an artist is to say, I can touch you deep inside and make you look up from your circumstances. I mean, if I failed that, oh my God, can you imagine? So it's up to if people have that reaction to anything I do, I say thank you. But
yes, yes, you have touched us all inappropriately sometimes, but you have touched us with your work, certainly. And so much of it, I mean, you're very prolific, so many different disciplines. Do you feel like talent is a liability sometimes, where it's just like you wish that you didn't have so many things that you could do well, because then you could focus just on one or two things?
I do envy some of my friends who are really great at one thing that they do and spend all their time doing it, because I just get, an idea hits me, and it's like the boy who followed the butterfly away from the class field trip. I just end up getting lost in something else and have no idea what happened. But I get a lot done, and I enjoy it. I'm enjoying even doing the animation nowadays.
I mean, that's the difficult part of it is that if you have to enjoy it, there's how do you create something from the heart if you hate it? You really can't do it that way. So it's very interesting and difficult because I think that the world does kind of expect you to be able to fit your abilities into a very specific box that can be explained or itemized. And I mean, even with what I do, I have a hard time telling people what I do, because sometimes I'm writing jokes, but sometimes I'm down on the floor making props, and sometimes I'm making little animations and doing funny voices, and and those are all things that I like to do. So I try to incorporate as many of them together as possible. And I feel like you sort of have a similar affect, where there's a lot of things that you like to do, and you try to seek out projects that allow you to do as many of those things at the same time.
Well, I used to have a problem when I was a kid, where I would, when I was a young teen, and I would talk to an adult who was working in the arts or something, and I would say, or theater, or something in the arts, and I would say, I've got this idea, and I would try to explain it, but I couldn't, and they would latch onto one thing that they heard and say, oh, well, you should go to college and study writing. And I'm like, no, but that's not it, you see. And then I'd talk in circles again, and they're like, oh, well, you should study film acting, And I'm like, no, but that's not really what I'm trying to say. And nobody understood me because I didn't know what I was saying myself. But, it's a story you have to tell just by doing it and letting time go by and just continuing.
Yeah, but it does make it difficult. It makes it difficult because it's the butterfly that you are chasing. And to try to get other people to understand that or to help you chase that butterfly can be complicated sometimes.
Yeah, and also there's one of the things that I felt when people were doing that was they were trivializing it, which is what people have to do sometimes when they want to market you or help you market something. They have to shave it down to something that fits into something that they're already selling, and that could be the death of something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to see that you are constantly creating new things and going in new directions. I'm looking forward to Deep Astronomy, and excited to know that some of the work that Dixie, Paul, and myself did will be part of it in some way.
Yes.
And hopefully there'll be room for more collaborations. I feel like, this is sort of a new situation here for me trying to record interviews, but I'd like to try to do this more often, and maybe we'll have you back when I'm a little better at it.
Anytime. I'd love to be. I'm honored.
So thank you, Cory Maccabee. You are a romantic scientist, I'm trying to think of. I had a whole list of things in my head, and now they're gone. Artist, animator, right? Filmmaker, Mars developer.
Oh yeah, working on Mars. I'm gonna, they're gonna laugh at me, but they'll stop laughing when they do.
Who's laughing now? Champion of butterflies. So many things. Is there anything, I guess, as we go out, do you have something inspirational to say to anyone who might fancy themselves an artiste?
I don't know. I'd say, just don't be afraid to be terrible. Just go out there. I mean, just try it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Don't take it too personally. And if you get frustrated, do a lot of push-ups.
Thanks, Coach. All right, well, go out there, everyone. Do something terrible, and if that doesn't work, do some push-ups.
Yeah, do some push-ups.
Thank you, Cory Maccabee. I appreciate it, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Thank you, Mr. Lobo. I've had a wonderful day.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Sleepless Knights of Insomnia pODDcast. I'm Paul Sanders, and for Mr. Lobo and our special guest, Cory Maccabee, in addition to my co-host for tonight, Gal 9000, we're signing out. The best thing about being an insomniac is never having to say goodnight.
Good night.
Gal? That was just a phrase. Can you turn the power back on?
You have been listening to the Sleepless Knights podcast, or should we say, pODDcast.
pODDcast.
Emphasis on the odd. Our theme is by Mars Homeworld at Deadhouse Music. Our opening announcement is by Ophelia Necro. She does a radio show called Suicide Watch. And you could reach Mr. Lobo at cinemainsomnia.com, or find me on YouTube, YouTube/Mr. Lobo. MISTERLOBO. Mr. Lobo on Facebook, Facebook/MR.LOBO, or on Twitter, at Mr. Lobo, MISTERLOBO.
Or you can find myself, Paul Sanders, or better known as Bestow TV, at Bestow.tv, on YouTube /Bestow TV, on Twitter at Bestow Prod, PROD, and on Facebook, Bestow TV.
If you want to place an advertisement with this podcast, and gosh, why wouldn't you? We could be talking about you right now. Contact us, Mr. Lobo at cinemainsomnia.com. That's MRLOBO @CINEMAINSOMNIA.com. Or support us on Patreon. Patreon supporters get to hear this podcast before anyone else, and a lot of other great stuff, right, Paul?
Sure.
Doesn't get it better than that, right? So come join the fun at
patreon.com/Sleepless Knights Podcast.
That's
patreon.com/Sleepless Knights Podcast.
Please stay up with us next week for another Sleepless Knights podcast. Or should we say, pODDcast.
pODDcast.
The best thing about being an insomniac is never having to say goodnight.
Good night.